4 times, death came to my door. True survival horror. My name is Marcus. I'm 32 years old, and I need to tell you about 4 times in my life when I nearly died. 4 separate incidents spanning from my teenage years to early adulthood. 4 moments when danger came knocking at my door in ways I never could have predicted. 4 nights that taught me that death doesn't care about your age, your intelligence, or how prepared you think you are. If you love true horror stories about real survival, situations, genuine terror, and the kind of experiences that make you question whether you're actually safe in your own home, hit like and subscribe right now. And keep listening, because these 4 stories will show you that sometimes the most dangerous moments come from the people we're attracted to, the locations we live, the choices we make, and the pure bad luck of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Part 1. The night I almost invited a monster into my home. I was 16 years old. It was the early 2000s. Cell phones were still a luxury most people didn't have. I had a telephone with a long cord connected to a receiver next to my bed. That telephone became my lifeline to the outside world. My home situation was complicated. My mother was an alcoholic. She spent most of her time fighting with my father about money in life and the general disappointment of their marriage. Eventually, she just left one day and never came back. After that, it was just my dad and me living in a dingy apartment complex in the downtown region of the city. The apartment building was in a rough neighborhood. I won't lie about that. There were homeless people on the streets. There were drug dealers. There was crime. But we lived on the top floor, and the view of the city at night was actually beautiful if you overlooked all the darkness and decay happening below. My father worked constantly. He was either at his job trying to make ends meet or out on dates trying to move on from his divorce. This meant I had a lot of freedom, a lot of time alone, a lot of opportunities to do things I probably shouldn't have been doing. But honestly, I was just a typical teenage boy. I didn't want to commit crimes or cause problems. I just wanted to be around someone who made my heart race. That someone was a boy named Jonathan. He lived directly across the street from me in the building opposite ours. By some miracle of fate or bad city planning, his bedroom window faced my bedroom window directly. We were on the same floor in our respective apartments. Jonathan was cute. He was funny. He had this smile that could light up an entire room. I became obsessed with him. I called him constantly on that telephone by my bed. We would talk for hours and look at each other through the window. We would wave. We would mouth words to each other. It was like a real-life version of a romantic movie. We thought we were the most clever and romantic people in the world. I called Jonathan immediately. I told him my dad was leaving. I told him I was going to be home alone. I told him he should come over. I told him we could finally be together without anyone knowing. He was nervous. He was scared of his parents finding out. He was worried about the consequences, but I was persistent. I talked about how cold it was outside. I talked about how I needed someone to keep me warm. I talked about how amazing it would feel to spend the entire night together with nobody watching, nobody judging, just 2 people who cared about each other. He finally agreed. The time was approaching 3 o'clock in the morning. We had been on the phone for hours, talking continuously while staring at each other through our windows. I could see him in his room packing clothes into a backpack, getting ready to make his way across the street and up to my apartment. He was about to tell me he was coming over. We were so close to finally being together. But something happened that I will never forget as long as I live. Jonathan's entire body went rigid. His face went completely pale. His eyes went wide and wild, like he had just witnessed something that defied explanation. His hand dropped from the phone. I heard it clatter against his desk. I was screaming into the receiver. "What happened? What's wrong? What are you looking at?" But he didn't respond. He was completely frozen. He was staring at something with an expression of pure, unadulterated horror. His mouth fell open slowly. His hands came up to his cheeks. He looked like he was watching something that was going to haunt him for the rest of his life. I kept screaming. I kept demanding that he tell me what he was seeing. But he remained silent, just frozen, just trembling. After what felt like an eternity, his arm moved. He slowly picked up the phone with a shaking hand. He put it to his ear. His other hand was pointing directly at me, and he said words that will remain seared into my memory forever. He said, "There's someone in your room." In that exact instant, before I could even process what he meant, every single light in my bedroom went off simultaneously. The darkness was absolute, complete, suffocating. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I was trapped in absolute blackness with an unknown presence. I didn't scream. I was too scared to make a sound. I just sat there, completely frozen, my heart pounding so violently, I thought it would burst through my ribs. The phone line went dead. Jonathan had hung up, or we lost connection. I was alone, completely and utterly alone in the darkness with someone or something I couldn't see. My hands moved on pure instinct. I fumbled desperately in the darkness until I found my lamp. When I turned it on, my room was completely empty. There was no one there. My window was closed and locked. Everything appeared exactly as it should have been. But Jonathan had seen something. The look of absolute terror on his face was not imagination. The way he pointed directly into my room was not a misunderstanding. Someone or something had been in my bedroom with me. I never found out who it was. I never discovered if someone had actually broken in or if it was some kind of frightening optical illusion caused by shadows and darkness and proximity to a prison of madness. What I do know is that Jonathan never came over. He never tried again, and I never quite felt safe in that apartment, ever again. Part 2. The escaped convict in my home. Years passed. I moved on from that incident. I tried to convince myself that it was just a strange misunderstanding. Maybe Jonathan had seen something outside his window. Maybe his fear was exaggerated by the darkness and the late hour. When I was 15, my family moved to a 2-story house in a quieter neighborhood. The house had been in my family for generations. My father insisted that it brought good fortune and prosperity to anyone who lived there. He refused to consider moving anywhere else. But there was one undeniable problem with this house that overshadowed any potential benefits. It was built directly next to a maximum security prison, not a few blocks away, not a mile down the road, directly adjacent. I could stand at my bedroom window and see the massive concrete wall. I could see the barbed wire strung across the top. I could see the electric lines running along the barrier. I could count the guard towers. I could watch the searchlights scanning the perimeter at night. Every single day I was reminded that some of the most dangerous criminals in the state were housed mere feet away from my bedroom. My parents hired a nanny named Sabrina to take care of me. She had been with our family since I was 2 years old. She was like a second mother to me. Her presence in the house made me feel safer. Having her around made the proximity to the prison feel bearable. It made me feel protected. But on one particular evening in the dead of winter, Sabrina had to leave early. She left me a note. She had a family emergency, something involving her relatives. She promised she would return as soon as possible. She reminded me to lock all the doors and windows. She reminded me to go to bed early. But being a teenager with a house to myself, I didn't follow her instructions. I stayed up late. I played on my phone. I lost track of time. By midnight, I realized I'd stayed awake far too long. I decided to go to bed. I lay down in my bed. My eyes were growing heavy. Sleep was finally coming. And then I heard it. Heavy footsteps from downstairs. At first, I thought Sabrina had returned. I thought she was carrying groceries or bags from her emergency situation. So I got out of bed and ran downstairs in the darkness to greet her, even though she had specifically told me never to do that. But as I reached the bottom of the stairs, a cold sensation spread across my entire body. The darkness seemed to have weight. The air seemed to have changed. Something was fundamentally wrong with the atmosphere in my house. I called out, "Sabrina, is that you?" Silence. "Sabrina." I called again, my voice smaller this time, less certain. Still nothing but silence. "Sabrina, this isn't funny," I yelled with desperation in my voice. Then I heard it, a trash bin being knocked over outside, followed by a low, menacing chuckle that came from somewhere in the darkness near me. That chuckle didn't sound human. It didn't sound like Sabrina. It didn't sound like anyone I had ever heard before. My entire body began to shake. Every nerve ending was screaming at me to run, to hide, to escape. But fear had paralyzed me. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. I could only stand there trembling. Then a figure began to emerge from the darkness. As this figure moved closer, stepping into the dim light from the foyer, I realized with absolute horror that it wasn't Sabrina. It was a man. An impossibly large man. He was about 7 feet tall. He was lean but muscular. He was wearing an orange t-shirt and pants like some kind of uniform. His hair was long and thin and greasy. It looked like it hadn't been washed in weeks. He was covered in dirt and grime. He looked wild. He looked dangerous. He looked like someone who had been living outside his entire life. He didn't say anything. He just looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. That silence was the most terrifying thing. Not knowing what he wanted. Not knowing what he was planning to do. My survival instincts took over. I turned and sprinted back up the stairs as fast as I could move. I ran into the nearest bedroom and locked the door behind me. I dove under the bed and squeezed myself into the darkness, trying to become invisible. I could hear him running through my house. I could hear him smashing into walls. I could hear him tearing the place apart. The sounds of furniture breaking and glass shattering echoed through the entire house. Then suddenly, all the lights went off. Someone had cut the power. In the complete darkness, I could hear him moving through the house. I could hear him getting closer. I needed to find a phone. I needed to call for help immediately. I crawled out from under the bed and started searching desperately in the darkness. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely function. Suddenly, I knocked into something. A drawer fell open. The sound echoed through the entire house. Everything stopped. Everything went quiet. I knew in that moment that I had given away my hiding place. I heard the footsteps start again. Slow, heavy, deliberate, moving toward the stairs, coming up toward the bedrooms. My hands fumbled in the darkness until I found my phone. With trembling fingers, I dialed 911. I kept my voice to barely a whisper. "Hello, this is an emergency. There's a man in my house. Please help me." There's a large man here and I'm home alone. I could hear him moving through the other bedrooms, opening doors one by one, searching systematically. Each door he opened brought him closer to my location. "Where are you, buddy?" He called out in a voice that made my skin crawl. Come out wherever you are." That's when I heard my bedroom door creak open. I held my hands over my mouth to stifle even the sound of my breathing. I was certain this was the end of my life. I was certain I was about to die. And then the most terrifying thing happened. He yanked me from underneath the bed. He grabbed my arm with an iron grip and pulled me out into the open. He threw me onto the bed and started slamming me down over and over. I was fighting back. I was screaming. I was clawing at him with everything I had. But he was far too strong. I was completely outmatched. And then I heard it. Police sirens, multiple sirens, getting closer, getting louder. The man realized he was trapped. He threw me down on the couch and ran toward the back door, trying to escape. But the police had already surrounded the house. He was arrested immediately, tackled, handcuffed, forced into a police car. Later, I discovered the truth. The man was a convicted murderer. He'd been incarcerated in the prison next door. He'd somehow disguised himself as a member of the security staff. He'd walked out through the front gate. He'd made his way across the street and broken into my house looking for money and valuables. If the police had arrived even 60 seconds later, if I hadn't called 911 immediately, if I had fought back any less aggressively, I would be dead. My parents made the decision that same night. We were moving. We were leaving that house forever. They could not live next to a prison anymore. They could not take the risk that something like this would happen again. Part 3. The Christmas Eve. Robbery. Years later, I was 17 years old. I was going through a rebellious phase. I didn't want to spend time with my family. I wanted to be with my friends. I wanted to cause trouble. I wanted to party. The holidays were a particularly tense time. My parents wanted me to go on a family vacation. The thought of being trapped with them for days made me physically ill. I did everything I could to avoid going. I refused to pack. I refused to get ready. I told my dad that I would rather stay home alone than spend time with the family. My dad got angry. He said if I wanted to choose my friends over my family, then they would just leave without me. He said some harsh things that I regret bringing up now. Instead of staying home like I'd said I would, I snuck out and went to my friend's place. There was a tree house in the woods near his house. All the teenagers in the neighborhood used it as a secret gathering place. We thought we were so clever. I spent the evening hanging out with my friends. We drank alcohol. We smoked cigarettes. We acted like we were living out some fantasy of invincibility. I met a girl named Stephanie that night. She was beautiful and funny, and she made me feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. We talked for hours, or at least it felt like hours. Time had no meaning when I was that intoxicated. At some point, I must have passed out because I woke up on the floor of the treehouse with Stephanie next to me and a couple of other people scattered around. My head was pounding. My mouth was dry. The morning sun was already in the sky. I panicked immediately. I knew my parents would have left by now. I had refused to go on vacation. I was supposed to stay home alone, but I had spent the night in a treehouse instead. I rushed home as fast as I could. When I got there, the driveway was empty. No cars, no signs of life. They had really left me behind. And in that moment, I realized I had made a critical mistake. I'd stormed out of the house without bringing my key. I tried the front door. Locked. I tried the back door. Locked. I tried prying open the side windows. Everything was secured. I was cold, I was hungry, I was hungover. So I picked up a rock and broke through the kitchen window by the back door. I reached through the broken glass and unlocked the door from the inside. I got into the house, but I felt guilty about the broken window. I cleaned up the glass and sealed it with duct tape. I called my mum to yell at her for leaving me behind. We had a terrible argument. She said some mean things. I said some worse things. She hung up on me. I called Stephanie, but she couldn't hang out because she was away with her family for the holidays. That's when reality hit me. I was going to be completely alone for Christmas. Completely alone in a house with no one around. By 10 o'clock that evening, I was an emotional wreck. I climbed into bed and tried to sleep. I was hoping that sleep would help me escape my thoughts. It was barely 10 minutes after I got into bed when I started hearing loud noises from downstairs. My heart started racing. I was suddenly very awake. I snuck out of bed and crept down the stairs quietly. As I peered into the kitchen, I saw two men standing there. Two strange men in my house. My parents' house. My home. For a split second, I was frozen, and then I made the worst decision of my life. I screamed at the top of my lungs. The sound echoed through the entire house. Both men immediately looked up, their eyes locked with mine. In that moment, everything changed. I turned and ran back upstairs as fast as I could. I locked myself in my room and grabbed my phone. I called 911, but I also tried calling my mom. She was slow to answer. I was panicking, telling her that there were burglars in my house, but before she could say anything, the men broke down my bedroom door. They charged into my room. One of them ran at me, picked me up like I weighed nothing, and threw me onto my bed. He was showing me that I had no chance of resisting. They started demanding information. Where was the money? Where was the jewelry? Where did we keep valuables? I was terrified. I was crying. I kept saying I didn't know. I kept calling for my mom. Look at him, calling for his mommy. One of them laughed. You better start talking, or we're going to hook you up to car batteries, the other one said menacingly. Then they noticed I still had my mom on the phone. One of the men took the phone from my hand. He started taunting my mom. He was demanding the combination to our safe. He was saying they would hurt me if she didn't cooperate. My mom kept insisting that we didn't have a safe, that we didn't have jewelry, that we didn't have anything of value. The men didn't believe her. They were talking about ransoming me, about what they would do to me. The situation was spiraling completely out of control. And then we all heard it. Police sirens, getting closer, getting louder. The burglars knew they were running out of time. They threw me down on the couch and ran toward the back door. But the police had already surrounded the house. Both men were arrested. They were pulled out of my house in handcuffs. They were read their rights. They were loaded into police cars. I was taken to the hospital to be checked out. I had some minor injuries, but nothing serious. Later, I found out that it wasn't actually my mom who called the police. It was Stephanie, the girl from the treehouse. She had recently moved in just a few doors down from my house. When she heard strange noises outside, she went to investigate. She saw the two men snooping around my backyard. She called 911 immediately. If she hadn't been there, if she hadn't heard those noises, if she hadn't called for help at that exact moment, I don't know what would have happened to me. What I understand. Now these 4 incidents shaped me. They changed me fundamentally. They made me into the person I am today. A person who is cautious, vigilant, someone who understands that danger is real and that it can come from anywhere. The first incident with Jonathan taught me that sometimes we invite danger into our lives without realizing it. It taught me that instinct is real and that people can sense things we cannot see. The second incident with the escaped prisoner taught me that safety is an illusion, that locks and walls and distance don't actually protect you, that only luck and quick thinking can save you when danger arrives. The third incident with the burglars taught me that our own decisions have consequences, that running away from home and leaving myself vulnerable creates situations where bad things can happen, that sometimes we create the very circumstances that put us in danger. But the most important lesson is this: good people die every day. Good people in safe neighborhoods, good people in locked houses, good people who did everything right. The difference between survival and death is sometimes just a moment. Sometimes it's just one person noticing something suspicious. Sometimes it's just pure luck. I was lucky, incredibly lucky. 4 times I should have died, and 4 times I survived. But I know that not everyone is that lucky, so I share these stories with you. I share them hoping that maybe you will be more careful. Maybe you will lock your doors. Maybe you will listen when something feels wrong. Maybe you will trust your instincts even when they seem irrational. Because the cost of being wrong about danger is too high. The cost is your life. These are the 4 times death came knocking on my door, and I survived to tell you about them.